The General, Cigar Dave. You hear him Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. here on KFYO in Lubbock and throughout many markets in Texas and the United States. It is the General, Cigar Dave. Dave, welcome.
Chad, long-ass greetings. How's everything in the hub city tonight?
Well, things are going great, though you are better than I am right now because you have lit up a Rocky Patel cigar, correct?
Yeah, I got the new Rocky Patel Edge A10 just fired up, which is the 10th anniversary of the Edge. It's a unique barber pole wrapper. It's got a Maduro, got a Costa Rican Corojo on here. It is just fantastic, and I just poured a little Jack Daniel's Sinatra Select. So I would say I have fired up the right cigar and poured myself the right libation.
You were doing well. You were doing well today. I told listeners earlier that I'm going to completely make this a selfish interview because one thing that I love hearing about from you are the different cigars that you talk about, and it's one of those with cigar smokers and with the lifestyle. You don't just stick to one cigar, two cigars, three cigars. You want to try everything. You want to try everything that's out there. And me, I like a spicy, bold cigar. Give me some good cigars I need to go with.
Well, there's a ton of them. I mean, on Saturday, one of Voice Talent Ed, who joined me, co-hosted with me, lit up a Romeo y Julieta Añejo, which is nice, very rich, nice and spicy. I'll tell you, the Rocky Patel Super Ligero, which he launched last fall, talk about spicy and rich, a lot of flavor. That's also a great cigar. You can't go wrong with that. The Padron 1926 anniversary, you can never go over the 1926 series. And Maduro, that's also a great one. The Sindicato Maduro is a nice, rich, spicy cigar. So there's a ton of them that are out there. And it's like being a wine connoisseur, Chad. Mm-hmm. Because when you are a wine connoisseur or you're a bourbon or whiskey connoisseur, you want to try new things. You want to walk in to a humidor, to a wine cellar. You want to sample something that maybe you haven't had. And that's one of the beauties of being a cigar connoisseur or a connoisseur of any of the alpha male good life activities or pursuits is that you never get bored. You never run out of cigars to try or wines to sample or whiskeys to try.
What are some of the changes that you've seen in the cigar industry since you've been doing your show for such a long time now? There are those who talk about how the cigar industry right now is just popping. It's huge. What are some of the changes that you've seen over time?
Chad, it's interesting you bring that up because July 11th we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary of doing the show.
Congratulations.
And it's very interesting because when I started the show, there were no enemies of pleasure or pleasure police. You could light your cigar pretty much everywhere, restaurants, bars, outside, parks. Nobody really bothered you. And around, I would say, 17 years ago, we started to see the intrusion of these enemies of pleasure, as I call them. And the first, in California, the People's Republic of California, they were the first to say we need to have a smoking ban only in restaurants. And people said, well, that's reasonable. You want to have dinner, you want to have lunch, you don't want to have smoke. Okay, fine. And I said, once you let them in the door, they're going to break down that door.
Right.
And we've seen it with this administration. We've seen it with not just the Democrats, but with Republicans as well. They're interfering in our lives, in our businesses. So they started with just smoking bans in restaurants. Then they came back a few years ago after all these restaurants and bars spent a lot of money on creating these beautiful outdoor patios that were cigar-friendly. Then they said, well, wait a minute. Now we have to go after these outdoor patios because there's that secondhand smoke. We've got to eliminate that. Then they came back and said, well, now we've got to do it in parks and on city sidewalks. Once you let them in the door, they bang it down. And that's why many of my listeners do not smoke cigars. We have a large following of people that say, look, I don't smoke cigars, but I like what you stand for. I like whiskey. I like wine. I like grilling. And I've said to them, even if you don't smoke cigars, be very careful because they will come after your coffee with the caffeine. They will come after your cookies or your cupcakes. They will come after your steaks, and they will come after your drinks. And they are. In every single instance, we are now seeing a country that has become a giant nanny state where we're too dumb to make our own decisions according to these bureaucrats that are in power. And nothing could be further than the truth, but they almost feel that they have to protect us from ourselves, which is utter nonsense. Our founding forefathers were not teetotalers. They enjoyed whiskey. Like George Washington had a distillery right on his home property. Yeah. They enjoyed wine. Certainly, they enjoyed the good life. And yet here we are, 230 some odd years later, and now we're living in a nanny state where they want to restrict us from engaging in any pleasurable pursuit.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up because even here in West Texas, which is looked at as conservative, the conservative part of Texas, here in Lubbock, we had a group that tried to pass a smoking ban, another smoking ban. The original one wasn't good enough. That even would have banned smoking in drive-throughs in your car. And this is just the stuff. And luckily, there were enough citizens who showed up at City Hall, put a lot of pressure on their city council members, and really did away with that group. They're still out there, of course, meeting and hoping for a more liberal council at some point. They're always out there.
Well, they're always out there. And what I find amazing is that many of these people that are jumping up and down about secondhand smoke, and by the way, when I always deal in fact. Whenever I'm involved in a debate, I always deal with fact. And the problem is with these enemies of pleasure, they don't want to engage in fact. They engage in making up whatever is necessary to advance their cause, even when there's no scientific basis or truth to it. And so what we see today are these groups that will do anything to take away our right to enjoy ourselves. And to me, all I know is this. My grandfather smoked cigars for 85 years. He smoked I don't know how many cigars. And he enjoyed his daily Crown Royal, a couple every day. And they didn't know anything about cholesterol, and they didn't exercise. But my grandfather lived to 85, my grandmother to 98 and a half, and they enjoyed themselves. They didn't have all the stresses that we have today. And I think when you take a look at cigars or whiskey or a good martini or steak, what it does is it allows us to chill out a little bit, to relax, enjoy some great conversation, fellowship, camaraderie, and we unwind. And I can't tell you how many physician friends of mine say, look, the only time, Dave, that I can really unwind is when I open up a nice bottle of wine or crack open a bottle of whiskey and have a nice cigar. It allows me to just relax, bring my blood pressure down. And I always say, let people worry about themselves. I don't need other people worrying about me. But unfortunately, today we just live in this nanny state where they feel that they have a divine right to interject their moral beliefs upon you. And I just don't believe that. And I think that we, as alpha males, have to rise up and say, enough's enough. I really believe. My grandfather always told me this, Chad. He said 95% of life is showing up. And when we show up to city councils or to state representatives or state senates or even the federal House and Senate and say, enough's enough. We're adults. We can make our own decisions. We don't need any of this nonsense.
Right.
That is that in and of itself has a dramatic impact because for many years, we as cigar connoisseurs ducked our head and said, well, we're not cigarettes. They'll bypass us. And I said, there's going to be a time when they're going to come after us.
Absolutely.
And sure enough, that's happened.
General Cigar Dave, appreciate your time today. And Long Ashes, we'll hear from you this weekend.
Hey, Chad, we appreciate being on KFYO and Rob Snyder and all the great folks over in West Texas. It's always a great pleasure to be on with you, and we appreciate you carrying the Cigar Dave.